All right, good afternoon. Today we'll be going through and updating the progress of our AI model as far as its progress in Pokemon Red. Last time we had made a few changes to the rewards. Let me find that here. We had increased the event rewards from a 2 times to a 4-time multiplier. When it went through, I had given it 30 million steps. Not given it 30 million steps, it completed 30 million steps since the end of my last stream yesterday. It didn't really get much as far as the event rewards go. I'll pull this over here. It ended up crashing out. But you can see here, like on average, it was between about 8 and 16 as far as the events. So it wasn't particularly doing much to complete those. Instead, what it was doing was it was trying to gain a lot of points through the leveling score here. So it spent most of its time like right outside of Pallet Town and was basically just power leveling the Pokemon that it had as much as possible. So when it first got out there, it would capture Pokemon. It would get a huge reward boost. One for seeing the Pokemon, 2 for seeing the Pokemon, 3 for capturing it, and then whatever level it was, it got a boost there almost flat. So what we ended up seeing was it had a fair amount of Pokemon in the party, usually between 4 and 5. That's because it starts with 5 Pokeballs to capture Pokemon with. It would capture like a Pidgey or a Rattata, but or multiple of those, and then I just work on basically leveling them up as much as it can. Once a Pokemon got to around level 20, it actually figured out to change the Pokemon. I'm not sure if that was intentional or more a factor of like the main Pokemon fainting at some point and then leveling up the other one. It did die quite a lot doing this along the way. So on average, we were talking between 8 here is actually the lowest amount of the deaths. It was between about 18 and 20. Basically, it would just keep using the same Pokemon over and over until it eventually blacked out. There were a few instances where I saw it was just using all the moves that had it up, and then it was just using the struggle towards the end until it would eventually like black out, and it wasn't really progressing much. Literally just in the grass outside of Pallet Town. And then I think to combat that, I'm going to take this down. Last time what we've done with the level rewards is where is it here? The get level rewards. What was happening was we were giving too much points too quickly. Had changed this to have 3 buckets, so it would taper off a little more reasonably. It would get the Pokemon, leveled pretty quickly, and then it would taper off to actually be 1/4. And I decided to put a middle ground here to try and encourage it to get to Mount Moon. And have more leveled Pokemon, so that way I would hopefully have enough moves to get through. But what ended up happening is that it basically just started staying in Pallet Town and not doing that. So I'm thinking to decrease this even more. So instead of having this extra threshold here, we're just going to I think, take it down right away to that 4th, and then take this down to maybe 8. So by the time it gets to level 40, it should have accumulated 25 points here, because it will get the straight 20 points, and then it will gain 5 points between 21 and 40. And then afterwards, it will massively decrease that. Overall, may encounter scenarios where it quickly captures a few Pokemon, hits 20 and falls off. I think that's fine. The key here is that it's still making progress in the game, but still getting some reward for leveling up. If this continues to over level the Pokemon, essentially, then we won't be making much progress. We ran for 30 million steps, and none of the agents had even made it into Viridian. They were still in the Palatine area and the area right around it, and then just, like I said, going through battles until you end up running out of moves to do and fainting. Another thing here is to go in, and I'm actually going to increase the exploration rewards. We've taken it from 1 to 1.5 to 2. I'm just going to take this to 3% of the total amount of coordinates that it built or visits within the game. So it'll be a 50% increase over before. What we had seen here with hopefully this tapering off more is that it should continue to explore. Leveling will just kind of be part of the progress of the game. So that way, we're capturing new Pokemon and then exploring and leveling. And I think those are the main features of the game. Honestly, capturing Pokemon isn't going to be too big of a priority unless it figures out how to purchase items from the Pokemon centers. What I've been seeing is that it basically uses the starter items that you have at the beginning of the game and anything it finds along the way, but it's not really figured out visiting Pokemarts and going in there. So hopefully this will trigger it to continue completing more of the game and do some of the exploration here. And then hopefully we will downtick the leveling. It was interesting that a few of these had figured out, there was a couple that were in, we're talking like the 20 or 30 range for heal, where it started to figure out that if you talk to the Ash's mom back in town, it will heal the Pokemon and then it would go back out and it would do more leveling and that would come back. And this is based on the percent Pokemon's health percentage, and then I believe it's times 0.5. Let me double check here. This one. This is down. Yeah, so for every percentage point times 5. So if it heals 5% times 5, you would get 0.25 as far as the heal goes. But it was starting to figure out, healing is a good thing. And we were starting to see increases in the scores compared to even the other previous runs. But part of this may just be that it had done so much battling at this point in time that it didn't particularly, it was more incidental than anything else. And then that may also stop it from exploring in the game because it's going to, instead of going forward, it's going to backtrack to an area where it can heal instead of making more progression. So the idea here is that we're going to increase the exploration rewards by about 50%. So from 2% of all coordinates visited to 3%, and then reduce the leveling to hopefully get it making more progress. So it's learned to quickly capture Pokemon, which is great, and then do some leveling, and hopefully we can get it to continue to move through the game. So that way it can start increasing its scoring from events, and we can get a better idea of how that change had actually affected. Yeah, the same thing for, we changed the badge rewards to be, instead of 5 times, for it to be 10 times. But it never made it to Viridian, let alone Pewter, to do the first gym there. So I think all in all, that should be doing it. There is, I think, an argument that you could make to removing the reward for seeing Pokemon here. It's not particularly adding much. You're going to have this kind of naturally increase as the game goes along. Whether you're doing trainer battles, which you would get points for the events or in terms of the levels for the Pokemon that you're doing here. It's a very minor reward as the game goes on longer, but here in these early points here, you get a large influx of points. I think this was, we were doing it times 2. Yeah. And it would start with about 5 points here, because it would see the 3 starter Pokemon and then Pidgey and Rattata, and so you get a quick boost, and then eventually by fighting in Pewter enough times, you encounter Pikachu, and there's one other missing here, and then there's not a lot as far as it's increasing. Like it's very front loaded. As you continue through the game, like Viridian will introduce a couple more Pokemon. Same thing when you get to battling at Brock's gym and then Mount Moon, but I don't know that this is adding a whole lot. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take this down from 2 times to 1, and then if I'm still seeing it stuck in the early game, I may just remove this because it's just so heavily correlated with other areas that it may not be actually providing a whole lot of value here. And then the other change was changing this back to a very small negative value to encourage it to not die as frequently. But the hope here is that it just won't stall out, because that's the issue we were running into before, where it had died enough times that it decided, I don't want to do battles anymore, so I'm not going to try and make any progression. So just a couple small changes here to hopefully here we're leaving the events the same, because we did not really get much there. We made some adjustments to the levels, making the die count become negative, and then working through the Pokemon scene to be half and potentially removing those. Another thing here is that the items, it doesn't particularly add a whole lot, but it does learn to, the idea here was that it would hope to learn to capture Pokemon and use the potions rather than just tossing them. I think I haven't really confirmed that is what we're getting by having those, or this here. So it's something I need to pay more attention to. And then this last thing here we had last time was giving it a small amount of reward for the first time it goes into these menus, and then no longer giving it a reward afterwards. The idea here was that you don't want it, as you progress, to begin stalling out, spending a lot of times looking at the map, going through the menus, throwing away items or things like that. And this actually did a really good job with that, where it had spent most of the time when I was watching it constantly going through, doing battles, and moving around, and not spending nearly as much time in the menus as it would before. I think this also may have helped to get it start a little bit quicker and get out of the Pallet Town into the grassy areas, where then it just kind of, learn that, hey, leveling's really good reward, so I should do a ton of that. And so I think this was really good in terms of reducing waste in the number of steps, where it wasn't constantly opening the menus anymore. It was taking far more actions that would lead to other results, whether it was the leveling or exploring. And so I think these changes will start to make changes to help the progression of the system. So that way we can hopefully get to back to the Mount Moon area and then eventually cross that threshold reliably. I did change the starter from Squirtle to Bulbasaur just to try and see if we could get better results. One of the nice things was I was seeing that they had a fair amount of Pidgeys and Pidgeotos in the parties, and with fair enough levels that once it got to Mount Moon, those would become more reliable, because it's really good at fighting the Zubats that you encounter there. And it handles a fair bit of Pokemon in general. It's really good in Viridian Forest, really good in Mount Moon, and then becomes fairly reliable in the early and mid game for Pokemon. Like personally, when I play, I usually have one just because it's a generally reliable Pokemon. It's got decent attack and speed. Hopefully that continues its progress here. So these are the base changes to incorporate for this time. Going through and looking at my list. Another thing that I wanted to do was improve the logging that we have. Basically, all we have is, I want to call them like high-level overviews of information. So if I go here, this was the output from the last run. You can see there's really not a whole lot of information here. It's mostly just system information. Versus if I go to logs when I was doing the Puffer lib project, where I could get really useful information. This was like the steps per second, so how well it was doing overall in terms of progress. This is just the straight number of steps that it had learned along the way, which I think is great. And then these are, I think, the key thresholds here. Is I want to see it work through, even if I can just get the badges output, to get an idea of how well it's actually performing. Just in trying to make progress through the game. You can see here, like these are the system information similar to here. And then I pulled these out of this one, but this is just across the runs, how quickly did he get to Brock and Misty? And then, next up was making it to Lieutenant Surge, which when the runs died, hadn't made it there yet. But even if you're looking at this, the second run, like 40%, almost 70% of the runs had made it and completed Misty. And that was, I think, about the 20 million step mark. We'll see here. See if I can find it. Yeah, it had only done about 20 million steps, but it had made it to Misty fairly reliably before it ran out of resources. So I do want to work on improving the output of the logging here. This is why I was comparing it against the code base for the Puffer library, where it's going through and it's gaining or getting information, but it's capturing it seemingly along the way while it's doing this. And I need to figure out how to do this for this current version as well, because just having more information would be useful. How quickly are we making certain milestones? Can we even isolate those in the data? I was looking through here to try and find, I know, here, the events JSON. So, for example, Brock should be here, right? And I would want to key in on that event to just make sure that we are, that we've completed it and how many have completed it, rather than having to look through the individual lines and hope we see that, oh, this is solidly all 10, and then I know everybody's beat Brock. But the question of like, when are those actually occurring in the data would be very useful. How quickly do we get there? And then, when it resets, how fast, right? Because this is, this one, the rate that I'm at now, it will do about 400,000 steps, and then it will reset back to the beginning of the game. And I think having that information would be incredibly useful to better understanding what's happening, getting an idea of, I want to say, progress in the game, getting an idea. I think this crashed out, but like these are all model information here in the training, which is fine. But can we get more, even just look at the, in these individual runs, what is the progression over time? So are we quickly running out and gaining a bunch of levels, and then, does that taper off like we expect? does exploration start to uptick as well. Not a lot of good visibility there, even though we have the lines here for printing. That would be something that I would like to continue to work on and improve, but it's going to be a lot of, I guess, stumbling around for these. So I'll be working on this for kind of the rest of my time here, and then I'll shift over into the learning mode so we can go through. I'll get the 8 instances spun up, and we can watch them kind of progress through the game as it learns. And what we'll do is we'll just pick up from the last we'll pick up from the one that had successfully completed Mount Moon, so that way it hopefully will have a better outcome this time with more of a focus on the leveling stuff. So let's dive in, talk about, we made a bunch of general changes, but now can I figure out how exactly to do this? So let's see what's happening here. So that's just a dashboard. Environment in data stats. So when it's doing evaluate, it creates a empty object called data stats. And then adds information into there. When it's doing the training, it goes through, it pulls in a bunch of information. So here, here, right, we see okay, so that is the end of the line there. We get it's less output here. The hope being that we can get this spun up. So when does it do the training? So we kick off, it creates the environments, right? We print these, say 16, it's going to go through, it's going to make each of these environments. We're setting up the checkpoint callbacks. We're then telling it to use WANDB. So it went through and made the environment, right? If we have a previous file, load the checkpoint. If we don't, we need to make a model. And you're going to give it the environments. Every n steps, it's going to train with batch sizes. ENV, huh? Subproc vec ENV. So this comes from stable baselines. It's going to create an environment for each CPU. And then do this. So let's look up stable baselines, 3 PPO. So we make the environment. Print the model policy, and then we model.learn. Steps bound side. Tensor log, which we use. You say multi-input policy. Interesting, we don't specify learning rate. The number of steps. No, those particularly seem to matter. And then learn the time steps. Call back. So that's just the learning. I don't particularly, I mean, this is the learn function, but I want it to also update weights and biases when it does the learning. Right, but it's going to keep doing this until it actually does the finish. And that, I think, is the challenge. Because I can't interject. Here you get the base model, and then you tell the model to start learning. Right, but if I wanted to say at every steps, go back and actually do the update. Right, so is there anything here relates to finish? Close. No. So basically when it's in here, it's just going to keep running. But this is the individual instances. This is not the overall. So you're going to end up with an update for each one. Right, am I understanding that right? I think that's the case. So instead of it always coming with output, I guess let's just see what happens. If I tell it I want to use log data step to log to previous step. That's fine. So this at every 50 steps, iterates, but then I can do because I have to have the initialized information. So I need to change the process. So by doing this, I would have to, it's kind of annoying, at least if I'm understanding it correctly. So the reason why Puffer can do it the way they do it is they have a demo wrapper which will have all the let's see here, I guess. So when it makes the environment, it passes the weights and bias information to it. So if I come here, go to create, and yes, so it initializes 1 dB and then does it. So since we are doing that here, why don't we just move this up? These would need to go up as well. Episode length is there. Session path is there. Checkpoint callback specified there. And this can go up here. And then this can go up as well. So config comes through, and so I need to include true, and then this will just become run. From here. Right, so it initializes. And name. Got it. So they specify that in their configuration for the environment name. Then so when they do that, they're pulling in the configuration file. They're also pulling in the, they're giving it an environment name, which is the name they're using for the run, and no ID, which is fine. So this will allow it to pass down here. Config equals environment config. Now I have a chicken and egg scenario. All right. For init, I need, it says config. Let's see here, configuration. What I want to do is I want to be able to get this information back. What the hell? So even if I take these out, I still need to be able to take this should go here. And env config append. No, it's not a list, it's a dictionary. And so that should append that into the dictionary. You're going to get the run information. And then this should pass it through to here. And then self dot I guess I should make these double quotes to say consistent. So I'm going to need to import here two things, right? If so now that's importing 1db, which means now when we go to the let's see this. Now we should be able to log things. So I hope this is right. So just listening in the background work. Cool biggie. Just trying to figure out how to add the how to add 1db logging to the base repo. So that way we can get more information in the output. The idea here is right now there's really not much that you get out of the 1db logging. If you look here at what they've got from Puffer, you can see that they get way more useful information, the number of steps that they've done so far, how many steps per second they're completing, and then even information about how well the model is learning along the way. And so I'm trying to incorporate some of these, even if I can just get things like this around the badges to get an idea on progress and then work to incorporate some of these other things over time. I don't have too much time left today, but the idea here is that we can hopefully improve what I'm getting back from the models, and then I'll sync it to the repo that I'm using myself, and then you can just like pick that up and add it into yours if you're using 1db. So go to the log here. Did I input time? The idea here with importing time is that we can set this up once the game has actually started to record the time, and then we can use that to calculate out the screens per second, or steps per second. So where's the best place to put this in? Probably just in the init. Yeah. So self. We do that, and then once we get down to the log here, step count, select that step count. So we need I'll go back up to your last log time, but also self.start time. And we can do this as this runtime. Take the current time minus the self.start time. That should give us every time that it's been running so far, then we've got the current step count minus the previous, and then we can just divide by the runtime here. What is time.time return? Like, will I get this in seconds or a longer time frame? Time in seconds. Okay, great. Because then at least we are getting seconds back from that, and that should be the basis. And then so we have, I guess there's two things here. Right, we've got overall SPS as well. And then the idea here is that this is simply self.step count divided by the runtime. And so you can get an idea on how well the previous iteration was doing. Right, so then instead of doing runtime, you can do time since last iteration. And where was that one? I know I had that step or time since last log time. And then last cycle time. And you can do time.time minus self.last log time. And then this can become the last cycle time. And then we can write these out to overall. Hopefully I did that correctly. Log. So I get an idea of the steps. Is it because it's hidden in here? I guess I may as well put it up here. And now we're looking correct. Okay. And the other thing I want is the badge info. So let's just get badges. Oops. Where's my... So this all needs to be wrapped in a dictionary. And hopefully this can come through correctly. And then once, well, at least I hope that we can print these out and we can start to see, let's do, get the badges, but I want to see if I can get these reward functions as well. Rewards, levels. Let's get levels, rewards. Exploration. It's not get explore map. Let's go to the reward sections. Another thing here. I'm hoping this works correctly. It's pretty significant changes. And I guess I'll take the chance, take it off, see if we can get it to good work. And if this goes smoothly, then hopefully, well, if it goes smoothly, we'll end the stream here. If it doesn't, it'll be where we'll pick things up for next time. So unfortunately, we won't know till it goes to making the environment. So it'll probably be a moment or two till we get there. The stream may stutter while this happens, just because it's going to spit out 24 instances, and that'll just about max out what I have available to me. So it made the connection. All right, here we go. And we crashed right away. No log, Tim. Good job, me. Well, that's an easy enough fix. Let's go through the same process again. There we go. Okay. So we kicked off a new run. Hopefully this will do. It looks like once the can table, I lose YouTube. No previous step count. Right. So we need to update that there, but the first time through, we need to set this back when we're initializing everything. So this needs to come here. 0. And when we initialize, zero. These should also come down to here. All right, let's give this another shot. Okay, looks like I'm still encountering issues with SpawnDB. Trying to okay, so I'll pick this up for next time. Looks like what I'm running into here is that I need to initialize it within the environments. Rather than doing it here before I make them. So I thought I could pass them through. Maybe there's something that I'm missing. But I'll do some research on this and we can pick this up for next time. So for those of you who are here, thanks for coming out and watching, and we're making some progress here. We've got Bulbasaur as our starter now, and then hopefully we can continue making improvements to how far we're getting in the game and conquer Mount Moon. So I'll see you all be on Thursday, so 2 days from now.